Did you know? There wasn't just one F-Zero game on the Super Nintendo, there were 3. As you all know, the first game was a launch title on the Super Famicom, but the other 2 didn't see release until the mid to late 90s. If you've watched this channel before, you'll no doubt remember the Satellaview, a Japanese exclusive add-on that connected the Super Famicom to a satellite radio service. Between 1996 and 1997, 2 F-Zero games were broadcast via Satellaview, containing all new racing tracks, live commentary, and CD quality music. Both games, BS F-Zero Grand Prix 1 and 2, were distributed as weekly broadcasts, with each show pushing exclusive new tracks. Thankfully, the ROM data for all 4 weeks of Grand Prix 1 have been preserved. Grand Prix 2, on the other hand, is a different story. As of the writing of this video, the 2 main broadcasts of Grand Prix 2 have yet to be found. There's no evidence that any collector or archivist has them. And after this many years, any surviving carts could have been overwritten, or even have succumbed to bit rot. And it's not that nobody's searching for them. The F-Zero community has gone so far as to put out an active prize bounty of $5,000 total for the 2 broadcasts. Now, let's make ourselves clear, we don't have these broadcasts. Disappointing, we know, but we do have something. See, while the ROMs are still missing, footage of the broadcasts have made its way onto the internet. All Grand Prix broadcasts were recorded during their original airings and uploaded online by a Japanese YouTuber. Using this grainy VHS footage, members of the F-Zero community have done the impossible. They restored the game frame by frame, creating a near one-to-one ROM hack. With pinpoint accuracy, they rebuilt a game without ever touching it. Today we're going to tell you exactly how they did it, why it was made, and how you can play this lost piece of F-Zero media for yourself right now. Sit down for this one though, it's a real doozy. Our story starts January 1993. Nintendo just became the largest shareholder in Saint Giga, a Japanese satellite company founded 3 years prior that made a name for itself as the world's first digital broadcast station. Saint Giga initially aired free radio transmissions via an online network service, but they later changed direction and start charging a subscription fee. This caused a significant drop in ratings, and Saint Giga nearly fell into bankruptcy. So Nintendo couldn't have moved in at a better time. Nintendo's investment in Saint Giga happened in the early 90s, when the internet was finally somewhat accessible to the average household. Network gaming was a hot topic in the industry, as folks no longer needed expensive link-ups and mods to play a multiplayer match of, say, Doom. For the first time, gamers could virtually duke it out miles apart and from the comfort of their own homes, and companies wanted to invest. In late 1993, Sega began testing its Sega Channel add-on for the Genesis. The following year, a company in Silicon Valley released the online X-Band modem for the Genesis and SNES. And as the largest shareholder in Saint Giga, Nintendo was deeply invested in providing a network service for its home consoles. With the 2 companies now hand in hand, work began on a Super Famicom add-on that could connect the system to satellite radio. The Satellaview was born. Nintendo officially announced the Satellaview in December 1994 and launched it the next year for 14,000 yen. It plugged into the underside of the Super Famicom, adding more ROM and RAM and connecting it to the internet. But you'd need 2 cartridges to actually play games. A small 1 MB memory pack that users could repeatedly overwrite that slotted into a BSX cartridge, essentially an interactive hub that sits in the Super Famicom cartridge slot. The Satellaview service aired regular radio programming, as well as software broadcasts, which were games that could be saved onto the memory packs for later use. Some software combined both mediums into SoundLink events. SoundLinks were games synchronized with live radio broadcasts, where Japanese personalities would commentate over gameplay, adding stories and jokes to otherwise plotless games. These games were meant to be played alongside the scheduled radio broadcast, so even if you kept them downloaded, they'd lack the replay value since you'd be playing them without the radio broadcast audio. One example of these SoundLink events was a remake of Super Mario USA, which originally aired alongside Japanese comedians performing an audio drama over the game, giving out hints and leading the player to the end of each level. And F-Zero did something similar. Between December 29, 1996 and January 24, 1997, BS F-Zero Grand Prix aired on the Satellaview. The game was distributed as 4 broadcasts with 1 airing per week. Japanese talking heads would give live commentary while CD quality remixes of F-Zero soundtrack played behind them. Very little is known about the production of this game. Both Grand Prix titles are modified from the original F-Zero source code. Nintendo's internal software department, who designed the actual Satellaview hardware, R&D2, is credited for most of Grand Prix's design. Many of its staff were unassociated with the original F-Zero, though some staff would go on to make other popular titles like Super Mario Bros. Deluxe and Kirby Tilt and Tumble. Of its 3 radio presenters, the only recurring host is Tsuyoshi Bakikoba, a longtime voiceover artist with credits on things like Kamen Rider and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Each week of Grand Prix followed the same format, 5 timed races with 4 new racers, with the 5th race being a brand new course. In order, the weeks, or leagues, were Knight, Queen, King, and Ace. And some of the new racers included the Blue Thunder and the Fire Scorpion. The new race tracks were sequels to Big Blue and Silence from the first game, as well as an exclusive two-parter, a windy desert called Sandstorm. In March 1997, Nintendo planned to release a localized version of GP1 for European and North American markets. It seems Nintendo was going to use them as a stopgap of sorts, as the Nintendo 64 game F-Zero X was only about 20% complete and wouldn't see a release until late 1998. That said, it's unknown if work on a localization ever started, with reports from Nintendo Power implying it could have been nothing more than a consideration. The sequel aired between June 1st, 1997 and August 27th and came in 3 installments rather than 4. A standalone BS F-Zero 2 practice aired in June, which prepared players for half of the 10 courses. In August, 2 weeks of Soundlink broadcasts aired, including the other 5 tracks, all brand new. There were 2 tracks for Metal Fort, a purple-pink Cyber City, and 3 tracks for Forest, a level that's kind of self-explanatory. F-Zero Grand Prix 2 aired close to the end of the Satellaview's life. Just 1 year later, in August 1998, Nintendo announced they were no longer supplying games to St. Giga, as St. Giga failed to apply for a satellite broadcasting license and refused to let Nintendo reduce the company's capital to address its losses. Nintendo submitted its last piece of original software in March 1998, and the final Soundlink broadcast aired 1 month later to an empty audience. The Satellaview service bid farewell in June of 2000, and the St. Giga name disappeared 3 years later in a merger. It was a quiet end to one of the strangest, forgotten pieces of Nintendo lore. And that brings us to today, where members of the F-Zero community are hard at work searching for copies of Grand Prix 2. In 2018, when videos of GP2 spread around the internet, a veteran ROM hacker called GuyPerfect quickly took notice. Guy is, to put it lightly, an F-Zero superfan with years of experience dissecting the games. The franchise's lost content always haunted him, and he felt compelled to help preserve the series' defunct content by any means necessary. In 2006, he released a level editor for F-Zero X. In 2020, he finished a GP Legend mod with all the Japanese e-reader content added in. Rebuilding Grand Prix 2 was the perfect project for him. Guy's process for preserving GP2 came from an unlikely source. In 2021, an engineer named FlibidyDibidy began work on what he called a living leaderboard. Flibity was a big fan of the Super Mario Bros. Speedrunning community and wanted to see what happened if all the best speedruns were played simultaneously. Imagine dozens of plumbers on the same stage at the same time. Mario 35 before Mario 35. For a time, Flibity's project was being made with machine learning. Speedrun.com recordings were used to train an AI model in the hopes that it'd be able to determine where Mario was at any given time. It ultimately didn't pan out, and they started using humans instead. The tool Flibity made for that, which he called Graphite, was instrumental in getting the project off the ground. Graphite was a tassing tool with an emulator on one side and a video player on the other, which allowed users to seek frames back and forth and pin down the exact button inputs, causing the emulator to produce the same frame sequence as the recording. This would create an identical frame-by-frame recreation of any given run. Runs could be recreated pixel perfect without the original player ever touching the controller. Graphite gave Guy an idea. If something like this could be done with Mario, maybe it could be done with F-Zero. In 2018, a Japanese YouTuber named Kun uploaded footage of all 6 GP Soundlink broadcasts, recorded during the original airing nearly 25 years prior. A lot of the footage you've seen in this video comes from these uploads. Since their release, Guy had been brainstorming a way to identify and reintegrate what was in these recordings. According to Guy, Flibity's insights was the key to this whole thing. The machine engine settings for Grand Prix 2 are known because they all appeared in Grand Prix 1, as well as the practice game. If I could reproduce the input sequence the player used, I'd know the player's exact location and viewing angle on every frame. And then, knowing that, I'd be able to determine where in the course each pixel came from. The footage you're watching now is one of Guy's earliest prototypes, created using a similar tool he made called Wax. That's Kun's footage on the left, resized to the aspect ratio of an SNES game. On the right is a frame-accurate reproduction of their 25-year-old button inputs. Below that, a live updating course map using colors from Kun's video and the position data from Guy's reproduction. After 3 laps, here's the recreated map of Metal Fort 2. Although much of the process was automatic, Guy still had to put in many hours of manual labor to get things pixel perfect. One of the most challenging parts of the process was recreating the original art. As you can see from this rebuilt footage of Forest, the sky graphics in the horizon are unfinished and represented by white splotches. Most of GP2's graphics are lifted from previous games, but these backgrounds are 100% original. Recreating artwork from a grainy VHS tape, especially art that's constantly moving around, is not easy. Guy spent months searching for artists to recreate the tracks, but no one was up to the task. That was until September 2023 when a Discord user named PowerPanda sent his team a cold call. Earlier that month, data miners discovered a series of unused tracks within the files of FZero 99, including one codenamed Forest. Speculation ran rampant, as fans thought Nintendo was reviving the long-lost Forest tracks from GP2. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. It was a reskin of Mute City 1 with different graphics. PowerPanda reached out to Porthor, a prominent member of the FZero community, in response to the data mining, looking to assist with his mod in any way possible. Porthor was the user behind the $5,000 bounty for GP2 and was also assisting Guy with the upcoming mod. Porthor put the two in touch. Guy told us, Panda didn't want to be hyped up and then let down again, so he figured he'd reach out and see if he could help make it happen. The three of us formed the entire creative team behind the mod. PowerPanda saved the day with the Sky graphics, Porthor assisted with course and graphics recovery, and I mainly focused on programming and course recovery. By October, PowerPanda managed to restore the graphics in Metal Fort. Forest was finished in January 2024, the month we completed the script. After countless hours of work, Guy and his team finished their goal. The FZero game that went missing 25 years ago is now playable in the form of a mod. Even better, you can play it now. We have spent the past couple of months working alongside Guy's team in preparation for this release, and we can't thank them enough for their efforts. All credit goes to Guy and company for this release. We are simply spreading the word. The download link for this mod can be found in the description. We hope you all can enjoy this reanimated piece of Nintendo history. But the story isn't over yet. Although we have a nearly one-to-one recreation of FZero Grand Prix 2, there's still the issue of the real ROM. We have yet to locate either broadcast, and though we have no evidence that any copies still exist, there's no need to end the search after this release. Again, surviving BSX cartridges are hard to come across and are often rewritten with other games. And it's not just GP2 that's lost. Dozens of Satellaview broadcasts, hundreds upon hundreds of hours, have been lost to time and, at best, only exist as grainy VHS recordings from nearly 3 decades ago. There's still time though. Preservation groups have begun digitizing these old, forgotten cartridges, with new broadcasts being discovered yearly. Who knows, maybe one day a Grand Prix cartridge will fall into the right hands and make its way online. For now, all we can do is wait. And remember, there's still that $5,000 on the table. Did you know that there were also chances for a possible FZero GX sequel, as well as an original FZero game for the Virtual Boy? Check out the video on screen for more on those. If you liked this video, feel free to like and subscribe for more facts from DidYouKnowGaming. And of course, feel free to check out my channel, Hard for Games, where we've dumped and preserved a number of these lost Satellaview games and broadcasts. Hope to see you next time.